To Delenta Coaches Connect podcast. This podcast features the diverse perspective of a thriving global community of coaches, leaders, and experts sharing their captivating stories, journeys, expert advice, and more. Hello, and welcome to the Coaches Connect podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Jones. And today we're going to be speaking to Joe Brianti about how to know when it's the right time to invest in tools, systems, and processes for your business. Joe Brianti is a management consultant with 30 years of business experience. She helps service-based business owners, freelancers, and subject matter experts find the right tools, develop the right processes, and implement the right policies for their business. Do you find GDPR, data protection, tech systems, and processes boring, complex, and overwhelming? For Joe, they are a fun opportunity to help businesses get streamlined with the right support tools in ways that minimize data protection risk. Joe has an extensive freelance career in IT and business transformation, project management with business analysis, and is a qualified data protection officer. She's an expert at working out the right tech with the right processes in a GDPR compliant way to support her clients' business growth. Joe doesn't believe in cookie cutter solutions. She carefully considers her clients' business goals, identifies and analyzes their requirements, and provides practical and actionable advice to match their needs. With that, let's welcome Joe Brianti. Hello,
Hi.
good morning, and actually good afternoon for you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, it's a beautiful, grey, cold afternoon in London.
Oh, nice. I'm located just outside of Washington, D.C. in the United States, in a place called Alexandria, Virginia. And here it's sunshiny outside, and it's probably about in the 60s, so not too bad of a day. So, hey, I
Sounds
love
great.
that beautiful green background. Oh, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's really vibrant and really uplifting, really positive colour.
Love it. So let's get into who you are. Let me know a little bit about, how you got into management consulting.
So, huge background in business transformation, worked in a lot of big companies as part of large project teams, doing all sorts of things. And the beauty of working in those environments is you learn an awful lot. And then, very familiar story, I had children, I had twins, and
Ah,
started working for myself. And over the last 7 or 8 years, I have evolved and found this niche where I love data protection. It fits in with all the stuff I used to do, the tech. And yeah, it really, really sort of fires me up.
awesome. So, it's something interesting when I was reading about you in terms of, some people can find GDPR or solutions and processes kind of boring or overwhelming. How do you really help your clients realize that it's not as tricky or difficult as they may think?
I do the tricky reading and then I translate it into very simple, straightforward English. And I make it as easy as possible. And one of the things that I really sort of understood about GDPR early on was that if you work with the right processes and you do things in certain orders, you're already GDPR compliant, so you don't have to worry too much about it. You just have to make sure that all the dots are crossed. Sorry, the dots are ticked, and the T's are crossed, and all of those kinds of things. So if you are working with straightforward processes, you are there or thereabouts, and you don't make it difficult for yourself then.
Yeah, and let's just take a quick step back for those people who aren't quite sure what GDPR stands for. Can you really kind of let our audience understand what that means, what it stands for, and what that means?
So GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. It is an EU and UK regulation, and it covers people individuals who live in the UK and the European Union.
Mhm.
Therefore, if you are an American coach and you only work with American clients and customers, and you never target, never work with UK or EU, then GDPR is not relevant to you. You might have to look at things like CCPA from California. And I know Virginia has some data protection regulations
Mhm.
now. So
Mhm.
that GDPR is about protecting the privacy of data for EU and UK residents.
And when you think about, coaches, small businesses, um, how do they typically find these types of policies or things that they need for their businesses? I think a lot of people just kind of start up their process. Hey, I'm going to coach. So we'll talk about myself. I'm a coach. Hey, I'm going to just start working with management teams and that kind of thing. So a lot of people just kind of put their head down. They start building a business and may not have many processes in place. For those people who just kind of hunker down and start, what advice would you give to those types of people with small businesses?
What I would say to people is ask the question, what should I be doing as part of the um, sort of the legal compliance element of being a business owner? So, for example, in the UK, there are a number of regulations that a business owner has to comply with. Things like how long do we keep our finance records for taxation and those kinds of things. I'm sure that American listeners will also have similar sorts of regulation.
Mhm.
Then there are different sorts of regulations around whether we're product or service based businesses. So for me, and advising small businesses, I say just look into what does a small business need to do in order to be compliant in the broadest sense. So it's not just about data protection. And the quickest and easiest way to sort of help yourself in terms of protecting data is to get a really good IT provider who will support you with things like backup, will support you with things like antivirus, and they'll take away all of that worry. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, there will be really good IT support companies who work with small businesses who understand that you don't maybe get it, and they will support you. They will set you up with the basic level of security.
Yeah, so that's great in terms of just kind of talking broadly and then drilling down into maybe some of the finite
Yeah,
things that people need for their businesses. But we brought you on today because what can really be tricky is really understanding, when is the right time? When is the right time to invest in people, in systems, tools, processes, those things for your business? Like, when is the right time to start kind of either thinking about that or actually pulling the trigger and saying, okay, we're going to do it? I got to do it now.
when you very first start thinking about perhaps becoming a coach, you maybe go through the training, you start to talk about your brand. What does that look like? But at the same time as that, you'll be thinking about things like, well, what is my customer journey? How does my customer become aware of me? Are they signing up for a newsletter? Newsletter. There's a piece of legislation I need to think about. There's a process. There's a tool there, and at that point, you're going to be thinking, okay, I'm going to have an email marketing list. So, what tool am I going to use? Is it going to be MailChimp, MailerLite, Active Campaign, Keep? The list goes on. So, at that point, you think about, well, what else am I going to do with that customer data? Do I want to upsell? Do I want to side sell? That helps you decide which of the many, many tools there are on the market will suit you. And also, the other piece of advice I would give there is while you're thinking about today and where you are now in your business, think about a tool that is going to offer you the opportunity to scale. What you
Mm,
don't want to do when you start off is get some very, very basic free tools in, and then 6 months later, your business has grown and you need to change the tool because that can be quite complicated. It can be more of a headache than taking the hit up front, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then, you can always scale through the options. So, for example, when I work with clients with Active Campaign, the very light version, it's $10, $15 a month. So you can start on that when you're just starting out, funds are tight, and then as your business scales, you can
Hmm.
scale the processes and scale the tool by going up to the next payment level. So automatically, when you start a business, you start to think about, how am I going to do this? What is my customer journey? And along the way, you're going to be looking at tools. One of the things I recommend people do is get a VA, get a really good VA in who can help you with producing some of the documentation, perhaps working with something like Canva, scheduling social media and your marketing and those kinds of things. It might feel like a costly investment, but a really good VA can help you develop some processes, can help you by taking away some of that administration time, leaving you free to work on the, how am I working with my clients and to actually work with clients.
You gave some really good gems there in this that long answer. I really appreciated you kind of sharing the idea of a VA. I think many small businesses, specifically coaches, kind of put the hat on of, hey, we're just going to do everything on our own. We'll figure it out. If I need to know how to put up a website, I will do all the research to figure that out. And I believe that we can get bogged down into the details and weeds of things that really aren't our expertise, right?
Yeah,
It's just if we have to spend this time to research and analyze, there's time that we could have focused on the real needs for the business.
yeah.
And something that I was thinking about when you were talking is, what is the biggest thing, one thing, two things, or the biggest thing that you believe businesses miss?
Opportunities is the biggest thing, because while a coach is busy trying to figure out how to do that thing, whatever that thing is,
Mhm.
they've missed that client because somebody else could have done it for them in half the time and could have maximized that moment of revenue. And the example I always give is, as a coach, you might be charging, let's say, $100 an hour.
Mhm.
You might pay your VA 25, $30 an hour, right? So think about, if you pay her for 1 hour and you work for 1 hour, you've already made $70. Add to the stress factor that that will take away from you, um, and you suddenly, that hour becomes worth 2 hours because they have increased perhaps the automation, or they've done something that's made your life so much easier that you get to finish work early and do whatever you do in your life, um, it's that kind of, make things easy, and so that you can grasp those opportunities, because we can all be in that position where an opportunity just misses us because we're bogged down in the tech, or we're trying to read that GDPR manual and we don't get it, or whatever it is that's in your business that is creating a headache, that's preventing you from being open to opportunity.
Yeah, and opportunity is often things that we can miss, right? And coming from your point of view and speaking about the opportunity is a very unique one because some people would say, "Oh, they missed certain policies or they didn't have this process in place." And while that is true, the biggest miss is the opportunity because they kind of didn't do all of the back office work
Yeah,
with someone who this is their expertise, right?
yeah.
In doing the work that you are so invested in right now, what have been some big aha moments for you, either about a business that you've worked with or really just about yourself?
About myself, it's about finding that thing that really feels exciting. And I
Mhm.
know people laugh at me all the time because I say I find GDPR and that kind of stuff really exciting, and I can get because I can see that as an opportunity for a business, because
Mm.
it's an
Mhm.
opportunity to minimize the risk. You
Mhm.
know, for the sake of kind of a couple of hours of getting some paperwork in the right way, or doing, streamlining the way you work to make sure that you don't make a mistake, because making a mistake in compliance can be
Can
damage
cost
to
you.
your reputation. It can
Yeah,
be a
costly.
fine.
Yeah.
It can be costly on many levels. So for me, there's a buzz about helping a business get that right, and knowing that then you go off into the world to do your thing, and knowing that you feel secure and confident that you have done what you need to do to be compliant. And you're not then feeling stressed and anxious about, did I get that form right? Or is that question right? And there's those kinds of things.
Yeah, and looking across the board when you were thinking about businesses, and you've probably touched on this, but I want to kind of see if you can dig into it a little deeper. What do you see being the biggest struggles for businesses? I mean, we did talk about, not having the VA and those kinds of things, but what are some of the biggest struggles that you see when maybe you're starting to work with some of these companies?
So the biggest struggle is actually, I guess, knowing what to do. You
Mm,
know,
hmm.
so for example, you'll find businesses that will read up on a piece of software, or read up on GDPR, or they'll read up on something else. They'll spend quite a long time on that, and they still just don't get it, because not everybody's brain is wired that way, and we all um, have different passions. And
Hmm.
if your passion isn't in that area, it can feel like wading through treacle. So you might get it and you just think, oh, I really don't want to do this. So it's about knowing what you're good at, I think, and it's about going with that flow, and anything that feels like mud, that you don't enjoy,
Right.
that you don't that
Definitely
you
have a
don't
list of those things.
you don't understand. And there is always somebody out there who you can kind of ask around and say, well, who can help me with this? And they will, tell you, I worked with her, or I know that she knows about that, or, you know, and that's the biggest thing, I think, for a business owner, is don't think you have to be by yourself, and don't think that you have to do it all, because you just don't, and you can't.
You brought up a really good point in terms of, I think often, solopreneurs, business owners, feel like they are alone, right?
Mm.
Many have left an industry, have started working for themselves, either just started or it's been a long time, right? Um, I think you make a good point in terms of, what could actually be, right, if they work with someone like you. The other thing that I wanted to kinda know is, how do you how do you kind of get buy-in, right? There are a lot of business owners that are like, "Oh, I don't need that, I can figure it out," or, "I'll just ask a few questions of this person over here and I'll figure it out." Like, how do you get buy-in? What would make me wanna be like, "Oh, I need to work with Joe Brianti?"
So I just give knowledge, and I'm happy to help. But then it comes down to the person that we'll have a discussion on, and I'll give them advice, give them guidance. And very often they'll go away, they'll have a look at it, and then they'll come back and they'll say, do you know what? I just think I want you to do it anyway because I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm bored with it, or I don't like it because I do the things that people are bored of, that they don't enjoy, that they find, even if they understand it, they find it difficult, or if it, as I say, if it's not your passion, if it's not something that fills you with joy, it will feel awkward. And that's usually how I get buy-in. It is to sort of talk to people, and as I, even if I make it as simple as possible, they just go, that's really not the kind of thing I want to do, you know. um,
They finally have that moment of, you know what, all the hemming and hawing about, oh, I'm going to just do it. I don't want to spend the money. I'm going to
yeah,
figure it out on my time, right? Because we're all about saving the money as small business owners.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, time is money, right? At the
yeah,
end of the day, time is money. So if you're able to come in and just alleviate or even eliminate some of the stress and overwhelm from small business owners, I'm sure it is an aha moment for
yeah,
them. The fighting and the internal tug of war of being like, I'll just figure it out, to having that initial conversation with you, or even you bringing some kind of value to a small project that they're working on or whatever, for them to see, like, oh, you know what? Joe's my person. Like, I need to bring Joe in to really help me, because I think people get so protected, over their brand, over their business, over their expenses, right? The finances around it, that it's sometimes hard to say, okay, I'm going to reach across and start working with someone. It's hard for that trust
is it
and understanding, right? And so um the fact that you're really able to kind of go in and have these conversations with these business owners is amazing. And I wonder how you started to tap into working with coaches around this.
so one of the things that I found through networking is that I'd work, I'd come across an awful lot of coaches, from business coaches through to health and wellness and psychologists and all of these types of coaches. And then a lot of them would say, "Oh, do you know, I had this great session with a client and it's really fun." And then I'd sit there and say, "So how do you store those notes?" And they'd be like, well, and then they would start to talk, and I would say, you need to think about this and you need to think about that. And then it developed that I understood sort of like how coaches work. And coaches are very often, even business coaches, they're incredibly creative people. They help their clients to find solutions.
Right.
And then they go back to something that's quite functional, which is tech, regulation. And it's not that they can't do it, because they're all bright people. They're incredibly bright people. They just, for whatever reason, sometimes don't get it. And then for somebody like me to come along and say, "Oh, but all you've got to do is tweak the wording here and that works." Oh God, is that all that long legal paragraph means? Yeah, and
You see that immediately, like, ah.
yeah, yeah, because let's face it, legal text, right? They'll use
Legalese
400
is tough.
words. They
Yeah.
will write 400 words to say, people say yes. And then you kind of read the paragraph and you go, well, do you know, if you look at that and if you say that instead of what you've got, that's that 400 words there. And that, man,
Brilliant. Brilliant, Joe.
yeah.
Yeah, Joe Brianti, I'm gonna say Joe Brilliant, right? We're coming up on the close of our time, but it's always great to share advice, right? Share some kind of um, advice that was given to you, or advice that you can give to our listeners, in terms of, as they continue to go through their journey and build their business and continue to be successful. What is some advice that you would like to leave for our listeners?
No question is too stupid
Mm,
to ask. there is always somebody else who's sat in your shoes right now, facing exactly the same problem that you are facing right now. And
Mhm.
they have been round that block 400 times, just like you're doing right now. So reach out, find your business community, and no question is too stupid, because there is always somebody in the small business community, in the coaching community, that has been there, who's done that, who found the fix, whatever that fix is, and it could be that it's the VA, it could be talking to somebody about regulation, it could be somebody about speak to this accountant, he'll sort the tax out. Whatever the question is, it's never too stupid. You don't know what you don't know, but there is
Yes.
somebody else out there who does, and they will help you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I've really enjoyed our time getting more knowledgeable on GDPR, getting more comfortable about feeling overwhelmed. How can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can come and connect with me there. By the end of the Christmas holidays, I should have by January my new website. I'm also on Instagram, so people can connect with me there too. Or they can email me on joe@jlbbusinessconsulting.co.uk, and we can have a chat.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you for inviting me. It's been great fun.
you have a lovely holiday season. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Make sure to follow us to catch more episodes of the Coaches Connect podcast.